I really hope this story is just somebody screwing with us, but given how petty the internet can be sometimes, I wouldn't be surprised if this is real. But before we get to the core of this story, let's talk about the current rumors surrounding Hideo Kojima's upcoming game, the game that he's potentially working on after Death Stranding. So recall that back in November of 2019, throughout Death Stranding's marketing campaign, Hideo Kojima at one point was interviewed by BBC, and he relayed that he would be interested in making a game that is dedicated to the cloud. And following that interview, on May 29th, 2020, Hideo Kojima talked about how a recent project, a major project, got canceled, how he was pretty pissed about that, but that's the games industry for you. And then, not long after, we learned on February 2021 that Google Stadia was at one point in talks with Kojima to work on something. Kojima was potentially going to release a game for the platform, but of course we know what happened with Stadia. They closed down all of their first-party studios, and they're essentially shifting away from internal game development. Apparently, roughly a dozen projects were canceled from various teams, and third-party licensing deals were also canceled as part of its shift away from video game production in recent months. People with knowledge of its plans told VGC, and among the things that were turned down apparently was a proposal from none other than Hideo Kojima. Now, Stadia claimed that it didn't have anything nor have announced anything with Kojima or Yu Suzuki, and then when asked specifically about the Kojima pitch, Stadia responded with, "We talk to partners all the time in situations that don't result in a project or even a proposal. This is very common. Speculating that two parties that speak regularly in this industry leads to proposals or otherwise is inaccurate," so that's their take on it. But Video Games Chronicle insists that based on their sources, Kojima was set to have some plans to release some kind of game on Stadia to take advantage of that cloud technology. And this project was allegedly supposed to be it was pitched as an episodic horror game. Sources indicated that the Japanese studio was keen to innovate in the cloud gaming space, but the proposal was ultimately blocked by Stadia GM Phil Harrison last year. Phil Harrison being the head of Stadia, and he's kind of screwed the pooch on Stadia as a whole, and I don't think I have to really get into that. Now, a little over a month later, on April 7th, 2021, VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb reported that, aside from Abandon not being a secret Hideo Kojima game, which was the speculation at the time, he also talked about how Kojima is actually in talks with Xbox to potentially partner in order to publish a brand new game, and he particularly noted how Phil Spencer, in this specific video, put Luden's figurine next to this Xbox logo, which he has done before to hint at other stuff, potentially meaning that Phil Spencer is hinting that he and Kojima are in fact in talks about something. And according to Jeff Grubb, based on what his sources relayed, the biggest piece of evidence I have that Abandon is not a Kojima joint is that Kojima is in talks with Microsoft about publishing his next game, according to a source familiar with the matter. And yes, the statue on Phil Spencer's shelf was referencing a potential deal with a legendary developer. I cannot confirm if Xbox closed the deal yet, but my understanding is that Kojima is the focus of a Microsoft plan to tap into the Japanese market and into Japanese talent. Moving on. A couple more months later, on June 21st, 2021, the same news outlet reported on Xbox hiring Portal developer Kim Swift to make cloud games like Kojima's, according to the headline. Specifically, the Xbox division announced today that it has hired former Stadia game design director Kim Swift to oversee cloud gaming collaborations with independent studios. Essentially, after Google laid off a bunch of folks within Stadia after they ceased internal game development and closed down all of their first-party studios, Xbox poached a bunch of the folks, among them being Kim Swift. And among the independent studios that Kim Swift will be overseeing as part of this cloud gaming collaboration apparently will include Hideo Kojima's Kojima Productions if and when Microsoft closes that previously reported deal, according to our sources. And allegedly, a significant part of why Xbox hired Kim Swift was, in fact, to aid Hideo Kojima specifically, so clearly there's some major push going on here. This is, of course, assuming this is true, but VentureBeat tripled down on this story with the following article published on July 1st, 2021, whose headline reads, Hideo Kojima's deal with Xbox reaches key milestone. That milestone, according to the article, is that Hideo Kojima and Microsoft has signed a letter of intent that states the two parties intend to work out the details on a publishing agreement for a new Xbox game, according to sources familiar with the matter. This signifies that both parties have agreed to a generalized deal while lawyers continue hashing out the finer points. So they're definitely proceeding forward. They've definitely talked things out enough where there are now legal proceedings to seal everything into contract. So assuming these sources are telling the truth, there's certainly stuff going on behind the scenes, and it looks like more and more the Xbox Kojima partnership is becoming a more sure thing. Now, remember that Stadia project, that episodic horror game series that was canceled? Well, apparently that is essentially being revived for Xbox's cloud gaming platform that's part of Game Pass. And this was something that Twitter user SoulsHunt, who is also an insider with a track record of accurate leaks in the past, has reported on by tweeting the following. Now, this is French and this is Google translated. The Google translation reads, Abandoned is not from Kojima. Kojima will sign a contract with Microsoft to publish his own episodic horror project. The Stadia game, Microsoft is not going to buy the studio. Sony would have refused the project because they do not like the episodic format. So the rumors going on right now is that Kojima's next game will be horror, and it will also utilize cloud in some way, shape, or form, and he's going to try to flex the muscles of cloud gaming and try to be as creative as possible with the capabilities that will entail. And I guess we'll see how that pans out. If there's one thing Kojima knows how to do is utilize a platform's full capabilities and kind of find creative means to create interesting new projects, even those that are not for everyone. They're interesting in some way, shape, or form. He does aim for things that other developers wouldn't, so I'm curious to see how he's going to blend horror with cloud gaming, with episodic, assuming this is all true. And obviously, if this deal goes through, it's safe to assume that this is likely going to be Xbox exclusive, as the deal is with Kojima and Xbox, and there's definitely a push for Xbox to tap into that Japanese market. Now, amidst all of this, there's been a bit of backlash from a loud minority of folks who are against the idea of Kojima publishing a game on Xbox, of Kojima making an Xbox game, to the point where one individual has actually started a petition to cancel this Kojima game solely because it is an Xbox game. And here's the petition in question that a number of outlets have reported on. The headline simply reads, Cancel Kojima Xbox exclusive game. And the reasoning provided is kind of silly. It reads like an angry fanboy rant. Kojima is betraying his loyal fans. He has been blinded by greed. We must help him come back to the winning side, which I guess he means PlayStation. Please share this petition everywhere. Not everyone has good enough internet to stream games. Not everyone has enough money to buy a new console or build a new PC. Please, Kojima, don't leave us. Part of me wouldn't be surprised if this was some kind of troll job, but at the same time, again, I've seen enough petty stuff on the internet that I could also see this being very much a real sentiment. Look, I'm not saying there isn't a conversation to be had about exclusivity. Obviously, there are conditions in which people are more willing to overlook exclusivity, like if it's a first-party game that's developed in-house and the funding from the company that is creating in-house games is what allowed that game to exist, or when, a publisher allowed for that game to exist because of the funding and support that they provided, then people are more lenient towards exclusivity. Whereas if a game was, something that could easily be third party, but then somebody stepped in and gave them a bunch of money and said, actually make that exclusive to us, then that's when exclusivity gets a little more shaky. But as far as Kojima goes, he did the same with PlayStation, with Death Stranding, for example. The reason that was PlayStation exclusive is because Kojima, he quit Konami or was fired by Konami or something along those lines. Still unclear exactly what happened behind the scenes, but basically there was that whole conflict. Kojima had to start from the ground up with a new independent studio. Sony stepped in and funded his new project, Death Stranding, by providing him with the financial support that he needed alongside the technology. They provided the engine for Kojima, specifically Guerrilla Games, who is a first-party studio for Sony. So given that Death Stranding's existence is owed to PlayStation and Sony's support, it goes without saying that that game would be PlayStation exclusive, and as much as I'd love to see that game come to Xbox so those players can also experience the game, it's also understandable the business side of things and how that had to work out and the support that that company provided and how that ended up being a PlayStation exclusive. This time, Xbox came in with a compelling proposition, and Kojima specifically seeking out something to do with cloud gaming and wanting to harness that somehow. And Xbox is very much developing and leaning heavily into cloud gaming, whereas Sony isn't quite there yet. And so this partnership, assuming it does lean this heavily on cloud, kind of makes sense. And if they're providing funding and support, then the game's existence may very well be owed to Xbox's contributions. And so naturally, that game would end up being Xbox and PC exclusive, I would presume. In an ideal world, no game would be exclusive, but that's just not how the real world works. There are certain conditions that unfortunately will pave the road to exclusivity. It'd be great if Xbox and PlayStation players could play Mario and Zelda. It'd be great if Xbox players could play, Mario and Uncharted and, Last of Us and all this, God of War, all of those Sony franchises. And it'd be great if PlayStation players could play Mario and Halo and all of those exclusive franchises. But that's just not how things work. There is the business side of things to consider, and there's that balance to be struck. While this is a game that may not end up coming to PlayStation, most likely won't end up coming to PlayStation, assuming the rumors are true, the fact remains that this game may very well actually exist because of Xbox's support. And so for this individual to come in and create a petition to straight up say, cancel this game outright, screw it for not coming to PlayStation, it's simply a ridiculous petition. It's kind of a pathetic petition, if I'm being honest with you. It's one thing to say I'm disappointed that I'm a PlayStation owner and I won't be able to play this because I can't afford an Xbox and I don't own an Xbox. And it's understandable to express those sentiments and to feel a little disappointed and to share why this kind of sucks for specific people. Exclusivity does mean that certain people are left out, and that's a conversation to be had for sure. But to call for the cancellation of a game just because it doesn't meet your exact criteria and just because it isn't on the platform that, you're fanboying for, again, it's just kind of pathetic. Now, this individual raises the point that not everyone has good enough internet to stream games, and that's a valid point and everything. But to say this game cannot exist because I am not able to partake in the Xbox ecosystem or in the cloud gaming ecosystem, to say that this game is not allowed to exist, that's basically attempting to censor this game and trying to cancel this game for just a really silly reason. This isn't a conversation, it's just a tirade. And you can see that this petition, while it's gained a lot of headlines, it hasn't gotten a lot of traction because most people agree this is just an incredibly silly petition. This petition was initially published 6 days ago and it just reached 1,000 signatures. And guess what? A lot of these signatures are only here because people wanted to post comments about how ridiculous and silly and sad this all is. And scrolling down through the top comments, plenty of people who are just kind of issuing insults and talking about the absurdity of this petition. To label this as a betrayal to loyal fans seems silly. Yes, I guess Kojima's primarily associated with Sony because he's worked with them for so long, but, a partnership with Xbox might breed interesting new games and projects and ideas that may otherwise not have been possible, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They say he's been blinded by greed when he's an indie studio who needs financial support for the types of games that he makes, and, he's not the only indie developer who will seek support from publishers who are willing to give him the right conditions and the right support. I, for one, am going to wait until we learn more information about this partnership and the project that Kojima is working on before I scrutinize whether this exclusivity deal is something that feels worthwhile, and if it is something that is ultimately beneficial to the game that he's working on. Xbox is going to provide a level of support and the technological capability for Kojima to be able to realize whatever this cloud gaming horror game vision might be. And so in that sense, it may very well be a worthwhile deal, but we don't know anything about this game. So until we learn more, I'm just going to kind of just stay neutral about this whole situation and hope that whatever is unveiled by Kojima and Xbox, assuming this is all true, is going to be something that will captivate us. And it's cool to hear rumors that Kojima may be diving into horror, given the major loss that was PT and Silent Hills. So to have him go to horror once more and try to create a game on that genre, to me that's kind of exciting. Don't know how I feel about this being a cloud-heavy game. Don't know how I feel about the episodic nature. Those are things that, again, we'll have to see how the business model of that is. We'll have to see how much this game depends on cloud before I issue a full judgment. But I just don't know enough to be able to make an accurate determination. What I do know is that this is just a silly reaction to have, and I really hope that it's just a joke. But if it's not, it's just one of the sillier petitions I've seen out there. But that's just my take on all of this. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the prospect of Kojima working on an episodic horror game that will somehow utilize the cloud to a certain degree. And what do you think about this petition and the loud minority backlash that we're seeing surrounding Kojima releasing an Xbox game? I say as long as the road leads to somewhere positive, a developer should be able to partner with whoever they want. But that's my take on things. Share your take in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.